Do worms have hearts or brains? Hi, welcome to Curious Kids Every Day. I'm Josh. How are you doing today? It's so good to hear from you. Hey, have you ever held a worm before? The other day, my sons and I were moving a huge wood chip pile out in the backyard, and in all of that wood and dirt, we found a huge worm. Once we had unearthed it, we knew we had to find somewhere safe for that little worm to go. So the boys took that worm into the grass. It was one of the biggest worms I have ever seen. He was very long, but mostly he was just very thick. He was very wide. You know how most worms are so small and skinny, it's easy to miss them? This worm was very hard to ignore. Now, my boys were asking me all kinds of questions about the worm. How does it move? Does it feel things? Why do we have to get it back into the dirt so quickly? Worms are very different than most other creatures. But they were asking me questions that I wasn't sure if I knew the answer to. Do worms have brains? Do they have hearts? How do worms work? Worms do have something like a brain, but it's not like your brain or my brain. Instead of one big brain, they have a very small cluster of nerve cells near their head. It connects to a long nerve cord that runs down their body. This system helps the worm sense what's happening around it and control its movement. Worms don't think the way humans do. They don't solve problems or make plans, but they can react to things. They can feel light or vibrations or touch. And that's why if you tap the ground near a worm, it might start moving. So, yes, they do kind of have a brain, but what about a heart? Well, this is where things get interesting. Because worms don't have just one heart. They have 5 pairs of structures called aortic arches. Can you say aortic arches? 5 pairs. There's 2 in a pair. 5 times 2 equals 10. They have 10 hearts. These arches squeeze and push blood through the worm's body. So instead of one pump, they have several smaller ones working together. Now, just like us, their blood carries oxygen and nutrients, but they get that oxygen a little differently than we do because worms don't have lungs. We get oxygen by breathing in. But worms get oxygen from air that dissolves in the moisture on their skin. And then it moves right into their blood. So that's why worms need to stay damp. If they dry out, they can't breathe. So if you ever see a worm squirming around on concrete, get that little guy into the dirt as quick as you can. Speaking of squirming, let's talk about how worms move. Have you ever wondered how they do that? Can you move in the same way that a worm moves? It's pretty hard to move your body like that. Now, if you've ever taken a good look at a worm's body, you may have noticed it kind of looks like they're made of tiny little squishy rings. A worm's body is made of many tiny segments, and inside those segments are muscles that squeeze and stretch. When a worm moves, it tightens some muscles to get longer and thinner. Then it tightens others to get shorter and thicker. They also have tiny bristles called setae. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. The setae grip the ground so that the worm doesn't slide backward. All of this works together, the nerves, the muscles, and the blood system, to help the worm move through soil. Oh, and if a worm loses parts of its tail, this is really cool, it can sometimes regrow it. But if it loses its head end, it usually can't survive. So a worm is indeed a very unique little creature, but worms are very well designed for their job. They can move, sense their surroundings, breathe through their skin, and circulate blood, all without having the same kind of organs we do. Pretty amazing for something you might accidentally find under a pile of wood chips. Okay, let's have a quick quiz. How many hearts does a worm have? It's got 5 pairs, which means 10. And how do worms breathe? Through their skin. And what helps worms grip the ground when moving? Tiny bristles called setae. Let's play true or false. True or false? Worms have a brain just like humans. No, that's false. They do have something kind of like a brain, but it's not like yours or mine. True or false? Worms have multiple small structures that act like hearts. Yep, that's true. 5 pairs of them. True or false? Worms breathe using lungs. Nope, that's false. They breathe through their skin. True or false? Worms can feel vibrations in the ground. That is true. Would you rather have a pet worm that is the size of a large dog or 1,000 tiny worms in a little worm farm? I'm not sure what I would do with a worm the size of a large dog, so I think I would choose the little worm farm with 1,000 tiny worms. You know, worms are so small that if you had 1,000 of them, it probably wouldn't even seem like that many if it was in a big enough pile of dirt. So I think I'd go with 1,000 tiny worms in a little worm farm. Okay, let's play What Am I? What am I? I travel through the body. I help deliver oxygen. And worms move me around using several small pumping structures. What am I? I am blood. You know, I didn't know until today when I started learning about it that worms do have a brain and a heart. Well, hearts. I would have assumed they didn't. And they don't have a brain or heart like we do, but they do have something kind of like it. And that makes sense because worms are a very different type of creature. And now we know why it's so important to get a worm back in the dirt if you ever find one somewhere it's not supposed to be. It probably didn't mean to get in the situation it's in. Poor little guy. Get that worm somewhere damp so it can breathe easily. Worms are amazing creatures. What kind of question do you think we'll ask tomorrow on Curious Kids Every Day? I can't wait to find out. So until then, keep asking questions and stay curious, kids. And we've got a few birthdays today. Today is Mary Catherine's birthday. Mary Catherine is from Georgia, and Mary Catherine is turning 1. Happy birthday, Mary Catherine. Elsie is from Texas, and Elsie is turning 6. Happy birthday, Elsie. Quentin is from New York, and Quentin is turning 8. Happy birthday, Quentin. Jonathan is from Washington, and Jonathan is turning 6. Happy birthday, Jonathan. Asa is from Mississippi, and Asa is turning 4. Happy birthday, Asa. Kaysen is from Hong Kong, and Kaysen is turning 6. Happy birthday, Kaysen. Tilly is from Pennsylvania, and Tilly is turning 5. Happy birthday, Tilly. And Cove is from Washington, and Cove is turning 5. Happy birthday, Cove. To all the grown-ups listening, if your curious kid wants their birthday mentioned on the show, please visit supportcuriouskids.com and join the Curious Kids Club. That's supportcuriouskids.com. See you tomorrow!